Welcome back to another FFPC weekly preview. I'm Aidan Liquorie. That's Dave Terpoilli. Dave, let's just start off. We'll address it. Last week, week one, our first ever
wasn't
show.
great.
It was bad. It was bad. People are coming to us. We're getting thousands of views on some of the videos on our channel. People are coming to us for fantasy advice, and we give them week one just terrible pick after terrible pick. And honestly, most shows have been started off their second episode admitting that because we could lose viewers from this, but we will. I mean, my play of the week was Allen Robinson. That was bad. You said do not start Nick Chubb. Dude had 140 yards.
Not great. Marquise Brown was my play of the week. He got a lucky touchdown. So I'm definitely not victory lapping that one.
I went 0 for 4 on our quick hitter things. You at least went 2 for 2 there. I will take credit. I'll pat myself on the back. Zeke was my friends don't let friends start. I was happy he did nothing. Just kind of
still sucks. And if you took
the Cowboys
the 5th round, he's still going to suck.
So you said on that show though, we had our moments in that show. You said the Cowboys are going to be last in that division. Now you weren't.
I think that's almost as given as possible. I mean, I would definitely, even with Dak, I think that it was. But now, I don't know how they haven't added a quarterback this week. I mean, Cooper Rush.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, for that team, they just don't. With a schedule they have that's coming up that isn't really that awful, you would think they would try to make some move to Jimmy G. Just seems too easy. Even like Mason Rudolph, somebody.
Maybe they believe in Cooper Rush. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but now the reports are coming out. They're trying to Dak could be back sooner. It just feels like they're going to mismanage that whole situation.
They're going to rush him back, and he's probably going to get re-injured. It just seems like a disaster waiting to happen. But that's
it really does. It does seem. But yeah, I'll give you credit. You did say that's looking good with in terms of that prediction, that bold prediction that you had. Many.
I mean, if you take Michael Parsons off that team right now, they could be in a real world of hurt. He could win them a game himself. He's that talented. He's the best defensive player in football.
That O-line looked bad.
Awful.
Dak, let's be real. I mean, Dak didn't look good before getting hurt.
They have no weapons outside of CeeDee Lamb. I mean, Dalton Schultz had some dump balls, but really, I mean, he didn't do anything special.
I mean, we'll get into it. I don't think Dalton Schultz will be talked about on either of our kind of future segments here on this show. Dalton Schultz, I do think gets a bump from this, from the Cooper Rush. I think he'll be solid, and I do like. The issue is I go back and forth because theoretically Pollard think role should rise, just more of a safety valve. But then again, he can't pass block, which is something we as a fantasy community completely overlooked in the summer. Like with all Tony Pollard, can't pass block.
Tony Pollard didn't really look great in the game even before the
6 carries, 8 yards. Yeah,
I mean there was no real flash. I mean, if you have Cowboys on your fantasy roster right now, you are in very, very fear mode.
All you have to kind of reassure yourself is one game with Cooper Rush last year where they didn't play terrible.
Right. They weren't bad.
But that's one game sample size that probably won't last. But no, it's rough if you're a Cowboys owner. But that kind of leads us into Terp. Obviously, we kind of talked about the Cowboys owner. That's really been the big storyline dominating this week one. But what was your biggest week one fantasy takeaway? I just want your one big thing. And you can give me a couple if you want, but what was your one big one?
One that stood out to me was somebody that I did not like in the preseason, or since he was signed by the team, looked really good. Julio Jones, Tampa Bay. I mean, he looked like the guy that was the Julio Jones of old. He is hurt this week. He didn't practice today, so everything that I said might be coming true, but I'm just going off week one. He looks spry. I mean, he had a nice, great deep catch. I mean, Brady was looking to him. I mean, Mike Evans was kind of a little bit of an afterthought in that offense. Obviously, Chris Godwin, who people that called in on Sunday, we pretty much told him not to start. We were right on that one because he had that one catch early in the game, and then obviously he got hurt. He shouldn't have been out there. Let's just face facts. They rushed him back. And I know it was a little freak injury, and it could have been worse, but Julio Jones is definitely the guy that I saw that surprised me a lot more than most.
I mean, I was on Julio from our draft coverages. I've always been telling I always said you're waiting for the injury shoe to drop with Julio, and it could be coming true. Granted, I think he banged up his knee on that nearly second amazing catch he had. He just dropped it, and you could kind of see him walking up gingerly. I think it's a little more cautious, but with the Godwin injury, Gage is banged up. I think the key is
banged up.
Yeah, Tom Brady trusts him clearly. I mean, why wouldn't you? He's Julio
Jones. No tight end play outside of Lenny. I mean, Rachaad White got some carries and touches out of the backfield, but nothing that would make you think he is a definite role yet.
I mean, they're banged up as a team because Lenny hurt it. Lenny, great game.
Oh, Lenny was great, but he looked like he was banged up at the end of the game.
But he busted up his hamstring on his last carry. So Buccaneers are interesting. But
don't forget the offensive line issues with Donovan Smith.
If Julio can stay healthy, though, I think it's certainly a takeaway because I was saying all preseason, but it came true. It's felt very similar to the Antonio Brown conversation we had a couple of seasons back of. Yeah. People were discounting it. Oh, he hasn't played. He's a wild card, but the talent will win out when you have Tom Brady throwing you the ball. That's what I'm a believer of. And Julio, as long as he's healthy, still has it. Not prime Julio by any stretch of the imagination, but I agree with that. My takeaway is a surprising one. I told you prior to the show starting. My biggest week one takeaway was actually a team that lost and got slandered on Twitter, rightfully so. But the Broncos, I think, were my biggest week one takeaway. And I think it shows every single guy on that team who we were debating, I think might very well be fantasy relevant. In a bad game, they played not great, right, in terms of decision-making and red zone opportunities in terms of converting in the red zone. They played terrible in those aspects. But the Broncos, Melvin Gordon, solid role, right? Red zone carries. Javonte looked great and maybe way more of a pass catcher with Russ than we ever anticipated. Sutton and Judy didn't get targeted in the first half. Both of them still put up very solid games, and I think those targets will rise as Russ gets more comfortable, right? Alberto got targeted. Alberto, I think maybe is one guy who, compared to the preseason hype,
he should have merged. He should have merged. The one guy in that game that you didn't see anything of was KJ Hamler.
Yeah.
He was definitely a guy that was popular that people were going to say was going to be better than Judy. I know it's just one game, but I saw nothing from him.
Nothing.
I mean, he had that one deep pass he caught out of bounds, but that was his only target, and he was non-existent. I feel like he's as close, very, very close to a waiver guy right now.
Yeah, when I was referring to the fantasy relevant, it was really just the two running backs, Melvin Javonte, obviously Russ, and then Cortland Sutton and Jerry Judy. It just showed me in a bad game where they didn't convert in the red zone. They should have won that game by a mile.
Easily.
They're
all those disaster fumbles and then just the missed field goal, whatever it was at the end of the game or whatever that coach was thinking. I mean, that team was clearly better. I mean, obviously the hype around Russell Wilson coming back to Seattle, but Denver had no business losing that game.
I in a bad game, their guys had okay fantasy weeks. Just imagine when that offense really starts clicking. The touchdown opportunity is going to be there. They're not going to be playing in Seattle, as you said. So my week one takeaway was from a game that I watched for the first half in an airplane, and that was that the Broncos are going to be able to move the ball. A lot of guys are going to be fantasy relevant. Kind of what there was just some questions about Denver because they were kind of a new unknown, but how we felt about the Chiefs, how we felt about the Chargers in terms of those offenses are just going to be plentiful. That's another takeaway too. If we really want to get into that quickly, it was any concern on your end, and I don't want it. We try and keep these shows quick in our segments, so we can't really delve into it maybe fully. But any concern on your end about LA and how much they spread the ball around, or is that just going to over time Mike Williams is going to be boom or bust?
It's not just Mike Williams. Austin Eckler wasn't great either. I mean, I think I saw a stat that he played 49% of the snaps. That's insane if you really think about it for a guy that was getting drafted in the top 5 in drafts. I'll definitely be worried. I mean, the only takeaway that I had is Justin Herbert still great. But also, Gerald Everett seems like he has, a solid role in that offense. And without Keenan Allen, I feel like it's only going to be higher. So, I mean, if you waited on tight end or you have Gerald Everett, I mean, I feel like that's a great spot. Mike Williams did nothing when Keenan Allen got hurt. DeAndre Carter, Joshua Palmer was quiet. I mean, obviously, Jalen Guyton's still there. But I'm curious to see how the game goes tomorrow. Everybody's calling for a shootout. Those Thursday night games always get funky somehow. I could see it being like a low scoring, 24, 21, 24, 20 type of game. But, I mean, the Chargers spreading the ball around definitely has me worried if I'm Mike Williams guy or an Austin Eckler guy.
Yeah, those week one takeaways, it's sometimes the big one is just, I need to get to week 2 to see how real it is. Real quick before we kind of get into our segments that we always do, what do you think you're seeing on Twitter, just even on TV, that you're like, this is the biggest overreaction, whether it be positive or negative, a guy that you went off and you're like, that's not going to last, or something that you're like, calm down on the overreacting, this guy struggles?
The person who's the overreaction, I think, is like people are like going crazy over Travis Etienne. Still got the pass catching duty, three targets in the red zone. It was a little sloppy. He obviously had the fumble.
First
Lawrence
game
missed him on it. Lawrence missed him on a touchdown. It was his first game as a pro. People forget that. It's a little worrisome because I'm a very highly invested Travis Etienne owner with James Robinson getting, starting and getting a lot of work, which didn't expect that. But we'll see if that holds up. I feel like Etienne's still the better player. That's another game I feel like Jacksonville should have won. But that's definitely the overreaction. I feel like people are trashing Etienne and saying Etienne this and Etienne that. He's still going to be a very good fantasy player. It might just take a little bit of time early in the season, but I expect once he gets his feet under him, he's going to take off really soon. And I think it's going to be this week against the Colts.
Underlying stats, like 11 yards, not even really underlying, just 11 yards per carry. He had good stats with it. Just it was more so the role of James Robinson. If we kind of went into Etienne's week anticipating more, like the Michael Carter, Breece Hall, for example, when kind of all the reports trickling out were, oh, Michael Carter's going to be the role. If those same reports were coming out of Jacksonville, we probably would have been more pleased with Etienne. We just thought that James Robinson wouldn't have a role, kind of simple as that.
So, or if he did, it would be a very small role. And it was actually the opposite, which is a little bit worrisome.
I mean, I think both of us are going to have to come into our overreactions and stand for our guys. Obviously, Allen Robinson was my play of the week. I can't get to the he's washed, he's not going to have a role just because he was open a lot. You saw kind of all the cut-ups. I think it was just more of a Stafford wasn't looking at him. McVay said they're going to get involved. He's the one for me this week. I need to see something. If he has another bad week, I might have to bail. I don't know.
He's definitely on my list, along with Devonta Smith.
Zeros. We said that, right? Yeah. We said that. I was worried because I'm like AJ Brown's just going to hog up the targets. I don't see
Devonta. The narrative. I mean, Devonta Smith was not even like they were like, oh yeah, they ran a lot of plays for him. It just didn't happen. I saw one target. And they got pulled, got taken back on a penalty, but still, I watched that whole game from start to finish. Mm-hmm. Try to watch a lot of these games from start to finish. Devonta Smith is definitely in a game this week against two suspect corners, which should be a shootout. Devonta Smith should eat, and if it's a AJ Brown, show again, you might want to think about Devonta Smith, not cutting him or doing anything crazy like that, but
not being reliable.
He's going to be a bench guy until you see something because you can't waste seasons, in the small regular season.
I think people are also a bit overreacting to Cordarrelle Patterson. I mean, I don't think them going into that, the Falcons, I should say, going into Sunday's game, expected him to get that much of a workload.
I don't think they did either. Damian Williams got hurt in the game. I know I said that on the show. It was going to be Damian Williams' season. I thought it could have been, and it might have been, but he got hurt early in the game. And the issue with them is they have nobody else. So if there was one thing I think might continue until they have somebody else emerge or sign somebody off the streets that shows them something, it might be Patterson. That worries me because I don't have a lot of Patterson.
I think it's just an overreaction in terms of people are projecting like, oh, maybe
carries.
Yeah, but I'm saying people are. I've seen like we might have missed on Patterson. Oh, he's going to have a much bigger role. I think it was more a product of Damian Williams getting hurt, and he was kind of, again, as you said, they were
the only guy
thrust into the role. I don't see it lasting all too much longer. That's kind of just one. I'm still not in on Patterson, I should say. I wasn't ever super low on him. I think he's going to end up the season finishing right around where he was supposed to be drafted. Like he was going 7th, 8th, 9th round. Like he's going to end up being like a fair pick. I don't think it's going to be, we were too low on him at the end of the season, like some people are saying. Let's hop into our first segment. Friends don't let friends start. I had Zeke last week, as I said, and got that right. Yours was Nick Chubb. So you're 0 for 1. I'm 1-0. Player being started in more than 80% of FFPC leagues. Who you think should be benched this week? Who's yours?
Tom Brady. Saints do extremely well against him. The offensive line's banged up. The receiving core's banged up. He's, I think, 0 of his last 6 against the Saints. I know he's coming back, and he's already said some stuff in the media this week how much this game means to him, and he wants to beat the Saints. Obviously, it's a big division game, but most of the time, Brady was drafted within the top 12 quarterbacks. I feel like he's just an automatic sit this week. I'd start guys like Marcus Mariota, Wentz. We could go on the list of guys that I would start over him. I feel like just bring more upside. If Donovan Smith doesn't play, which my guess is he probably doesn't, I mean, that line was getting beat up. And Brady has no mobility, and he knows that. He don't like taking hits. So I just don't think there's a ceiling type of situation for Brady. So if you have another option, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota, I feel like they're all better options.
Yeah, you perfect segue into my guy is Mike Evans, and kind of similar reasons. One, he's a bit banged up. Two, against Marshawn Lattimore in his career, Mike Evans' numbers, big drop off compared to his overall stats. I think obviously we've mentioned Godwin's out, Julio's banged up, Russell Gage is banged up. Very well could just be Mike Evans, and the Saints kind of tailor all their defense attention to him. As you mentioned, the O-line's banged up. There's just a lot of concerns related to that Bucs offense going against what should be a solid defense that always plays them tough, where I'm just kind of staying away based on the matchup and just the overall kind of what's going on with Tampa Bay. The thing is, as you kind of mentioned earlier, Mike Evans had the touchdown, hell of a catch. He had a couple of nice catches, but as you said, I wouldn't maybe call him an afterthought, but that
the targets weren't there.
Didn't stand out, but in no means.
Definitely didn't stand out. His catches were pretty much wide open looks. They weren't anything like really tough, like, down the field type of stuff that he's known for.
Yeah, I mean, and they weren't any he didn't have any deep targets. Just kind of a lot of slants, post routes, just kind of over the middle. And Brady didn't have a ton of time always, so some of it was just quick checkdowns, or Micah Parsons got to him a ton. I think Mike Evans is a guy who, well, he's gonna end the season just based on volume. He's a great receiver, top 20. He's not going to be a reliable fantasy receiver at all this year. I'm pretty confident in that. I think he's going to be very reliant on touchdown and red zone targets, and it's never sometimes where you want to be with your receiver. So we're both off the Buccaneers. The thing is, what's crazy enough is that O-line stunk, at least to my eyes, in that game, except in terms of pass protection. Run game-wise, to the left.
Dominated.
That's after Donovan Smith went out of the game. Very strange.
Lenny was just running all over him. White had a couple good carries.
Massive holes were just being opened up by that line that was struggling in seemingly all other aspect of it. That was a terrible Sunday night game, but
awful.
So we're both off Buccaneers. Our next one, 2 touchdown guarantee. AJ Dillon got me 1 last week. He got stuffed on a 4th down that would have given it. Yours was Sutton. Broncos had a bunch of red zone trips. I don't believe Sutton got a single target on those.
He got a bunch of actually targets in the red zone.
He did? See, now here's the thing. I'm watching on an airplane, so God knows.
When they were late. They were late. He had a couple deep shots that were in the end zone. They passed interference on one. The other one really wasn't catchable. And then he had another one that Russ didn't even give him a chance. He threw it behind him.
So that's a tough look for me, trying to talk like I was fully paying attention to that Monday night game while I was on an airplane. So Sutton had his opportunities for your 2 touchdown guarantee. He just wasn't able to hit it. Redeem yourself. Who's your 2 touchdown guarantee this week?
So we talked about this a little in the show, but I think I'm changing it on the fly. I think my 2 touchdown guarantee this week will be somebody who really wasn't existent at all in week 1. DJ Moore wasn't really a guy that came out of nowhere week 1. Literally, everybody thought he was going to be the focal point of that offense. Him and McCaffrey, nobody else. And it was the Robbie Anderson show. So I feel like DJ Moore in a good matchup against the Giants, whose defense is okay, nothing great. And obviously coming off that big, emotional win, coming home, all that good stuff. I feel like DJ Moore can get loose. 2 TDs for him.
It's always bold projecting a guy who literally averages 4 touchdowns per season as a 2 touchdown guarantee, but you're going bold. I am not going bold for a guy who's not really even projected, I believe, in the top 15 this week. It's kind of a lame pick by me. I'm going Gabe Davis. I don't like Tennessee, although the Tennessee Buffalo games in recent memory I've always seemed to yield good games. I think that Buffalo offense last Thursday, everyone thought it was going to be good, and they somehow opened our eyes even more.
Better than expected.
That was another thing we did on the show. We were all over the Rams too, weren't we? God, we were terrible.
Totally. It was a tough week 1.
It was bad week 1. And I mean,
I live bet the Broncos 4 times.
Oof, that's tough.
Not good.
Plus 550 to win the division. You can keep betting on them if you'd like.
I think I'm going to hold off for right now.
But I'm in on Davis. I think he does. He's going to command the red zone targets. That was like another overreaction. If I'm going to throw it in here quickly, is there was a bunch of people like, 16% target share. He was just a couple of broken coverages. Gabe Davis is going to get his for sure.
He's going to get his. I mean, is he going to be a top 5 fantasy receiver? Probably not. Top 10, maybe fringe. But in that offense, he's going to have his 20-plus weeks, and he's going to have his bad weeks. They're still going to be, 10, 8 maybe at the worst. So he's going to be fine. No worries.
Gabe Davis is my 2 touchdown guarantee. Sure. I think he's going to command red zone targets. I think he gets a couple. Also, a little bit odd. Did 2 Monday night games at a kind of and week 2. I remember when I was at the live events, we always hand out the schedule, like, and I made it this year. And let me tell you, I was very confused when I was going through and like I color coded the Monday night games on the schedule handout that we do.
Confused too.
And I was like, what am I missing here? And I'm like, oh, there's just 2 in week 2. So that's something to look forward to, including
Gates
your
open
birds.
at 2 o'clock in Philly. I'll be there.
Oh, there we go. Start nothing like it. 2 p.m. on a Monday. Eagles first birds tailgate of the year. Y'all must have forgot. Brevin Jordan, tier. OJ Howard.
A big
we
tier.
had no concern over.
I mean, OJ Howard. I think they said. I think I read a report this week that he ran 6 total passing routes, 2 TDs. I mean, I don't think that's real. Do I think Brevin? Do I worry about Brevin Jordan? Of course, but I don't. People are going to spend a lot of money on OJ Howard tonight, and it's not going to work out for
him. Mine was Julio. I'm going to count it as a half win because, again, as you said, he looked
good.
great. He looked great statistically, though. He only had, I think, like 11 points, so it wasn't like the most amazing. But you know what? I'll pat myself on the back. I've been a Julio guy, so you know what? Quick hitters are not my cup of tea. Clearly, as I went over, but y'all must have forgot. And the sit one, I'll take it. Terp. I'm gonna say redeem yourself after each one because we both did so bad. Who's your y'all must have forgot this week?
I think this one's kind of safe, but I feel like it's a pretty solid choice. Joshua Palmer with Keenan Allen being out. I feel like that game. I don't feel like it's going to be a shootout, but I feel like he's going to get enough targets to put up a 15, 16 point fantasy effort with potential with more. Mike Williams showed nothing last week without Keenan Allen. So, people are going to be like, trying to get sneaky with DeAndre Carter, but I feel like Joshua Palmer's the better play. So he will be my pick.
DeAndre Carter, I refuse to believe he's going to be fantasy relevant after watching.
Never been fantasy relevant in his life.
Going to college in Philly, watching all those Eagles games with my roommates, no chance DeAndre Carter is suddenly good. No shot. Josh Palmer's yours, mine. So we said on the bottom, it says started in less than 25 that should get starting consideration. I'm amending that. You're not starting this guy this week, but I think he's going to have a role. I think that role is going to grow, and I think he's going to be a popular start come week 3. That's Jordan Mason. Shanahan came out today. Elijah Mitchell's done for 8 weeks. Now, what this could end up being is just Deebo Samuel RB1 for sure. He's going to get his carries. But Jeff Wilson's there. Did not look great. Granted, again, that game you can literally first off, that game,
throw it out.
Wish we recorded you and me and we had a nice bunch of people here in our Twitter spaces, which go off Sunday between 11:45 and noon. Hearing me and Terp just kind of freak out about that game was top tier, just commentary.
I mean, I drafted Trey Lance on a bunch of teams by himself, so I didn't have the option to pick up anybody, so I was kind of stuck. And then you were talking about if you use Winston, you were right. If you use Mariota, you were right. Pretty much if you used anybody you were talking about, you were right. But it's just so hard to make that decision week 1. Yeah. Like I drafted Trey Lance in the 9th round. Now I'm going to pick up Jameis Winston and cut somebody for him.
Because then there's also the flip side that we were talking about is, it's a monsoon. Maybe there's just a bunch of QB design runs for Trey Lance and it works out. I mean, he had 13 carries.
He had 13 carries. He just couldn't get loose. And around the goal line, for whatever reason, they gave it to Deebo.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a brutal game, so I can't judge. But regardless, Jeff Wilson didn't look fantastic in a game that other running backs did look solid. Like, that's maybe the one position you can somewhat judge. And today, Shanahan said that it's still kind of an open competition for carries. We're going to roll with the hot hand. Jordan Mason was getting the rave reviews over TDP in training camp. He was active week 1 for a reason. He's being started in 1% of leagues this week. You can't start him this week. I'm not recommending. Again, it's an amendment.
He will be very popular tonight. Probably, in my opinion, he should be the most popular guy.
I think he's going to have a role come week 3, and he's going to be the Niners. He's going to be the best listed running back on the Niners while Elijah Mitchell's out. So I think people kind of forget quickly about the preseason guys. The little buzz. Jordan Mason is my almost forgot. And we're gonna close it out here in terms of right before quick hitters. Play of the week. I gotta redeem myself on Allen Robinson, so I'll kick it off. This week, I got to go to Old Reliable, and people watching us, they're like, they're just repeating, like they're just repeating the guys they love. But I'm going Elijah Moore had a touchdown call back last week.
Thanks
He
for that
always
reminder.
balls out.
A lot
with
of money on him that scored TD in that game.
Oh,
very sad.
He always balls with Joe Flacco. It's just like a rite of passage. He had a solid game if you were watching. And I was trying to monitor. I was at the sports bar, and it's overwhelming every time I feel like I go there. But he looked. The Jets receiving core looked solid. And granted, the game script helped them because they went down early and had to chuck it around. Against Cleveland. Cleveland didn't look fantastic against Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. I'm just going to ride Elijah Moore and the Joe Flacco connection this week. Again, no statistical analysis behind it, just that gut feeling. Joe Flacco, Elijah Moore, I'm going to ride them. Elijah Moore is my guy. I need to rebound for my play of the week with my guy. Elijah Moore's mine. What's yours?
My play of the week, I'm very confident on this one. I would say he finishes a top 5 receiver this week. Kind of out of left field a little bit because last week he was in the monsoon game. Brandon Ayuk will be my play of the week. I feel like 2 rookie corners on the outside for Seattle. A lot of questions. You saw Jerry Jeudy get by him, pretty easily in that game in Denver and that ugly, offensive effort by the Broncos. Trey Lance will rebound this week. Trey Lance, top 3 quarterback. Brandon Ayuk, top 5 receiver this week. Brandon Ayuk is my play of the week, and I'm very, very confident on that one.
Yeah, Brandon Ayuk, I mean, the Elijah Mitchell injury, in a weird way, as we said, could very well help Brandon Ayuk the most, because if Debo kind of moves to that running back role that he had in the monsoon game and he had at the end of last year, that's when Brandon Ayuk kind of really started asserting himself and kind of hitting on those preseason expectations he had there in 2021. So that's your play of the week, Brandon Ayuk. Mine is Elijah Moore, two upside receivers that we're hoping atone for our mistakes last week. So we're going to end up the show with some quick hitters here. I'm just going to read them off to you. You went 2-2. I went 0-4. I'm still searching my first one. Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, who scores more fantasy points this week?
Josh Allen.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to because Mahomes led quarterbacks. Both are in good games, but yeah, I'm just going to.
Both are in Josh great Allen. Game scripts, but I just feel like Allen puts up better numbers
for sure. 2 running backs who slightly underperformed: Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey, who scores more fantasy points?
Christian McCaffrey. I'll never pick Derrick Henry in any quick hitter. You don't got to ask.
Yeah, I wrote this down and kind of realized one's playing Buffalo's defense, one's playing the Giants. I'm going to agree with you, CMC. 2 guys who either are popular waiver claims or were just bargain bins at the end of drafts. Jarvis Landry or Robbie Anderson, who scores more fantasy points this week?
Robbie Anderson.
I'm going to go with Jarvis. Jarvis looked good. That was a name we talked
about. Baker puts on a show this week.
That was one of the guys we talked about in our live draft coverage that we always say you're shooting for upside, Jarvis but there's Landry. A couple of guys there who aren't sexy picks, but could actually.
We talked about like a Jarvis Landry or a Tyler Boyd. Jarvis Landry just does so much more.
Yeah, and the Saints offense in that second half looked good. I was freaking out because I did really start Jameis, and I was like, oh my, this first half, I'm like, this is just terrible.
A disaster. Because Lance wasn't doing anything, but he was doing a little bit more than Winston.
I'm like, I'm comparing like just 2 crap halves. So I'm like, oh my God. But no, that Saints offense looked good. Michael Thomas, Jarvis out targeted and out caught Michael Thomas. So I'm going to go with Jarvis. I'm going to continue riding him. I think he's a little bit safer than Robbie. Mike Williams, obviously just nothing last week. Becomes the wide receiver 1, over under 65 receiving yards this week against the Chiefs.
I'll take the over. I mean, 1 deep pass with him. I think you always got to take the over in that spot. I'm not confident about it, but I feel like
this is an easy over.
Yeah, I feel
this
like
is an easy over for
65.
Me.
That's low, especially in this type of game.
It's
he's going to get the deep throws. It's just he comes down with 1 or 2. I mean, he gets there right away.
I think it's an easy over. I think it's just probably a little bit lower of the line that because there's the uncertainty of it. Well, if they're
I feel like you're going to learn a lot about guys like Mike Williams this week, his role, DJ Moore, guys like that, Terry McLaurin, who didn't get a lot of targets. You're going to see these guys this week and see if the coaches try to get them the ball more. And if they don't, I think that's a big worry going forward.
Mike Williams, though, that was another. You saw people freaking out. This is what he was last year at times too. Like he's
never catching 10, 12 balls in a game. I mean,
he's gonna have zeros where he does nothing. And he's gonna have the boom games. That's why you invest him in that like 4th round ADP.
Yeah.
Last one for you. two top tier tight ends. Both of them, meh weeks. Kyle Pitts versus the Rams, or Mark Andrews versus the Dolphins. Who scores more fantasy points?
Kyle Pitts.
I might go with Mark Andrews. A little bit of a bounce back week for him. I think
People
they both have good weeks.
Kyle Pitts does not get there.
If Kyle
he's a first round pick, he was going 7th overall in drafts, FFPC drafts. If he doesn't get there this week, people are going to start losing their minds.
The thing is, again, it's probably annoying when you look at it, takes such an analytical view, and I try not to, but I often do, because that's what's. But when you're hearing, but it's true, like Pitts' routes run were great, targets were fine,
all the positives except for the numbers.
Just had a couple of a couple uncatchable passes. Just I mean, London got the buzz because he played better, but like again, Pitt's like underlying metrics should be fine for future weeks. It was just a down week relative. Like his expected fantasy points were higher than they were. But no, if he has a bad week, he's the one. If he has another bad week, people are going to start freaking out. I think more than any other, especially in the FFPC
100%
format. That is going to do it for us, Terp. A little 30 minutes for the people there. Hopefully we return next Thursday and our picks are slightly better. Hopefully we get not as sloppy of a games, but
hopefully
we shall see. So until then, that's going to do it for us. Please, fantasy gods, give us a
start Brandon Ayuk.
Start Brandon Ayuk. Start Elijah Moore. Allen Robinson. Figure it out.
And
so I can get back on the bandwagon.